Dry grass snapped under heat, and the sky above Mount Carmel looked like polished brass under the scorching summer sun. For 3 long years, not a single drop of rain had touched the cracked soil of the ancient kingdom of Israel. 450 men stood on the high ridge, shouting frantically to a silent sky, desperate for a divine spark. Beside them stood one lone prophet, wearing a rugged mantle of haircloth, holding a wooden pitcher filled with water. By sunset, fire would fall directly from the blue heavens, but not for the God that the crowd expected. King Ahab ruled the northern kingdom of Israel with an iron grip, yet his heart belonged entirely to pagan gods. Under the heavy influence of Queen Jezebel, high altars to the Canaanite storm god Baal were erected across the countryside. The true worship of God was violently suppressed, forcing faithful prophets to seek shelter in damp mountain caves. Suddenly, Elijah the Tishbite walked uninvited into the palace gates, proclaiming a severe and immediate drought over the land. He declared before the throne that neither dew nor rain would fall except by the authority of his solemn word. For 36 agonizing months, streams dried into rocky beds and olive orchards turned into brittle gray dust. Famine crept through every town of Samaria, until King Ahab himself went out searching for patches of living grass. Along a quiet mountain pathway, Ahab finally confronted Elijah after searching every surrounding nation for his whereabouts. The king sneered angrily, calling Elijah the troubler of Israel who had brought misery upon the royal kingdom. Elijah did not step back or bow before the golden chariot or the armed guards surrounding the angry monarch. He answered firmly that Ahab and his father's house were the real cause, having abandoned the divine commandments. Elijah issued a bold challenge: gather all Israel to Mount Carmel, along with 450 prophets of Baal. Bring also 400 prophets of Asherah who ate daily at the luxurious table of Queen Jezebel. The mountain was chosen strategically. Carmel was long viewed by locals as the special sacred dwelling of Baal. If Baal was indeed the ruler of weather and lightning, let him prove his strength on his own ground. King Ahab sent swift runners across every territory, summoning tribal leaders, warriors, and weary humble farmers alike. As recorded in the ancient book of 1 Kings chapter 18, thousands marched up the slopes for the ultimate test. They gathered on jagged mountain terraces under the scorching sun, eager to witness which God held absolute power. Elijah stepped forward before the crowd, scanning thousands of silent, sunburnt faces waiting in tense expectation. Elijah spoke to the crowds, asking how long they would wobble indecisively between two completely different beliefs. If the Lord is God, follow him wholeheartedly, but if Baal is God, then follow him without hesitation. The entire assembly remained completely silent, unable or unwilling to utter a single sentence in response. They wanted relief from the drought, yet they feared royal soldiers and hesitated to commit their lives. Seeing their hesitation, Elijah proposed a public contest that no priest or king could ever call biased. Let 2 young bulls be brought forth and prepared upon wood on 2 separate altars of stone. No man was permitted to put fire beneath the wood, no hidden torch or burning ember would be allowed. The prophets of Baal would pray to their God, and Elijah would invoke the sacred name of the Lord. The true God who answered the prayer by sending fire down to burn the sacrifice would be recognized forever. The gathered people shouted out together in approval, agreeing that the proposal was fair and honest. The 450 priests of Baal stepped forward confidently, shouting their acceptance of the challenge. They built their altar high on the summit, placing heavy rough stones in a tall rectangular structure. They slaughtered their bull, placed the pieces neatly upon timber, and began their ritual incantations. From early morning until middle noon, they marched around the stone altar, crying out to their deity. "O Baal, hear us," they screamed toward the vast cloudless sky, but only silence echoed across the valley. They leaped wildly upon the stone altar, waving bronze rattles and shaking ornate ritual banners. The sun climbed to its highest peak, beating down mercilessly upon the sweating, shouting worshippers. Yet there was no sign of answer, no whispering voice, and not a single spark upon the dry wood. At noon, Elijah began to mock them with sharp and pointed words that pierced through the oppressive heat. "Shout louder," Elijah told them, "for he is surely a god, perhaps he is deep in thought. Perhaps he is busy with other matters, traveling on a long journey, or fast asleep and needs awakening." Enraged by his words, the pagan priests redoubled their wild efforts in desperation. They screamed louder, leaping wildly as their voices grew hoarse under the blazing sky. Following their ancient dark practices, they drew sharp iron daggers and bronze spears from their belts. They slashed their arms and shoulders until crimson blood poured down over the stone altar. Hours dragged on as the blazing sun began its slow and steady decline toward the great sea. They continued their frantic prophesying until the appointed hour of the evening sacrifice approached. Yet no voice answered, no sign appeared, and not a single spark touched the bloody timber. Bleeding, exhausted, and humiliated, the 450 priests collapsed around their quiet stone structure. The silence across the mountain top was complete, heavy with the undeniable weight of failure. Elijah stood up, adjusted his mantle, and stepped forward into the middle of the clearing. Many people find themselves standing on spiritual crossroads, caught between split loyalties and shifting cultural expectations. We often attempt to keep one foot in living faith while clinging to comfort and human approval. Yet hesitation brings no true nourishment to our dry places, it leaves us empty and exhausted. The idols of control, approval, and self-reliance demand constant energy, yet remain utterly silent in critical moments. They drain our joy and peace, offering nothing in return when real trials arrive. As written in 1 Kings, Elijah issued a challenge that echoes into modern human hearts. Living faith requires decisive devotion, stepping away from lukewarm compromise into clear light. It calls us to choose whom we will serve when worldly options fail to satisfy. When we stop chasing empty promises, we prepare our lives to receive divine restoration. God does not share his glory with false idols shaped by worldly ambition or deep-seated fear. He waits patiently for a heart ready to repair what was broken and stand firmly. The test on Carmel was not meant for public spectacle, but to restore genuine connection. When every human effort fails, God remains faithful, ready to answer those who seek him. Elijah called out to the tired audience, inviting everyone to step closer to him. The quiet crowd pressed forward, stepping over loose rocks to gather near the solitary prophet. Before him lay the ruined altar of the Lord, torn down during Queen Jezebel's violent persecution. Elijah began gathering heavy stones from the dust, working with calm and steady deliberation. He chose 12 stones, representing the 12 tribes of Israel, symbolizing unified faith. With those 12 stones, he rebuilt the sacred altar in the holy name of the Lord. He dug a wide trench around the stone altar, deep enough to hold measures of seed. He arranged dry logs neatly upon the stone structure and laid the sacrifice upon it. Then Elijah gave a surprising instruction that astonished every single onlooker on the mountaintop. Fill 4 large clay jars with water and pour it over the offering and timber. Men ran down to the nearest mountain spring, bringing heavy jars back up the steep path. They poured water over the sacrifice, soaking the meat completely and darkening the wood. "Do it a second time," Elijah ordered, and they poured 4 more jars over the structure. "Do it a third time," he commanded, and they drenched the stone altar a third time. Water ran off the sides of the altar, filling the deep surrounding trench to its brim. The wood was dripping wet, surrounded completely by a moat of clear standing water. Human reason dictated that soaked wood could never catch fire under normal natural conditions. Elijah had deliberately eliminated any possibility of human trickery, hidden sparks, or natural deception. The sun dipped low toward the western sea horizon, casting long orange shadows over Mount Carmel. It was the precise hour of the evening sacrifice, the sacred time set for ancient prayer. Elijah stepped close to the drenched stone altar, standing without rituals or panic. He did not shout, slash his skin, or jump frantically around the stone structure. He raised his eyes gently toward heaven and prayed in simple, sincere, faith-filled words. "Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God. Let them know that I am your servant, doing all these things according to your divine word. Hear me, Lord, hear me, that this people may know that you are God. Turn their hearts back to you once again," Elijah prayed into the quiet twilight air. The prayer ended, and for one suspended second, complete silence fell over the entire mountain. Suddenly, a tremendous sound like thunder ripped open the sky directly above Mount Carmel. A terrifying pillar of brilliant white fire descended straight from heaven onto the altar. Fire fell from heaven upon Mount Carmel with overwhelming divine power. Instantly, the animal sacrifice vanished into bright ash without leaving a single trace behind. The holy fire consumed the drenched oak logs, incinerating thick wet wood in a flash. The granite stones of the altar turned white-hot and crumbled into fine powdery dust. The surrounding soil burned away, leaving a scorched circular crater where dirt had been. The intense divine heat licked up every drop of water stored in the wide trench. A massive plume of roaring white steam surged high into the darkening night sky. Heat radiated across the summit, forcing thousands of observers back in complete shock. Nothing remained on the ground except a glowing mark where the drenched altar had stood. When God reveals His holy power, every false illusion vanishes completely before His light. No human scheme, no pagan shout, and no cultural trend can stand against His presence. He does not require massive crowds or elaborate rituals to demonstrate His holy sovereignty. He looks for humble obedience, a surrendered heart, and genuine trust in His holy word. When the divine fire fell, the paralyzing doubt holding the people captive blew away. They saw that God was not distant, silent, or powerless, but living and mighty to save. As written in 1 Kings, the whole nation fell prostrate upon the earth in awe. Their unanimous confession echoed across the valley, drowning out every memory of Baal's silence. That same living God calls us today to clear away idols and bow before Him. He meets us not in frantic anxiety, but in the quiet surrender of genuine faith. When we bring our dry, weary hearts to Him, His presence purifies and restores us. His divine fire consumes our paralyzing fear and instills enduring courage in our souls. He transforms hesitant, uncertain steps into lasting spiritual conviction and quiet strength. The awestruck crowd remained face down upon the mountain ground, overwhelmed by divine presence. Elijah commanded the people to seize the 450 deceptive prophets of Baal. Not a single false priest escaped as the assembly led them down to Kishon Valley. There at the rushing Kishon brook, judgment was delivered, cleansing Israel from foreign idolatry. Elijah then turned to King Ahab, instructing him to go up, eat, and drink peacefully. For there is the distinct sound of abundance of rain, Elijah announced with total certainty. Ahab went up to feast, while Elijah climbed higher toward Carmel's peak to pray alone. He bowed low to the ground, putting his face between his knees in deep humbleness. Elijah instructed his young servant to go look toward the great sea for signs of rain. The servant walked up, looked across horizon waters, and reported that nothing was visible. Go again 7 times, Elijah urged, remaining steadfast in prayer upon the rocky summit. 6 times the servant returned with empty reports of clear skies and quiet air. At the 7th time, the servant returned with news that filled the prophet with hope. Behold, a small cloud rises out of the ocean, no bigger than a man's hand. Elijah immediately told his servant to rush to Ahab with an urgent royal warning. Harness your chariot and travel down, lest heavy downpours stop your wheels in mud. In moments, dark clouds swept across the sky, turning the horizon black with storm. Strong winds gusted over ridges, bringing cool moist air over sun-baked soil. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, soaking parched land that suffered for 3 years. Dry riverbeds overflowed with fresh water, restoring life to cracked fields across Israel. The power of the Lord came upon Elijah, granting him supernatural endurance and speed. He tucked his mantle into his belt and ran ahead of Ahab's chariot to Jezreel. God had answered by fire, and now he answered by rain, renewing his covenant. Mount Carmel stands as an enduring sign that God remains faithful to those who stand firm in truth. When circumstances seem dry and human solutions fail, God works powerfully behind the scenes. He hears sincere prayers of trust, even when surrounded by loud voices of unbelief. You may feel outnumbered in your convictions, facing difficult mountain challenges beyond your capacity. Remember that one faithful person standing with God forms an absolute majority on any mountain. Build your life on truth, casting away worldly idols that seek your devotion. Offer him your trust, even when drenched in heavy trials or quiet tears. He is faithful to respond, consume your anxieties, and bring refreshing renewal to your spirit. His divine strength remains active today, and his love toward you is steadfast. Let us hold fast to the earnest prayer offered on Mount Carmel long ago. Hear me, Lord, hear me, that this people may know that you are God. May your heart be turned fully back to him in complete peace today. May his presence fill your home, bringing courage, light, and restoration to every dark valley. If this account has encouraged your soul today, subscribe to our channel, and let the echo of Scripture stay with you.